Jose is asking, he needs advice from us. He's asking if DeAndre Hopkins and Travis Etienne, if they're too high already. You've done some drafts already. We're degenerates. It's the end of May. We've already put in however many drafts. In your experience, is Hopkins or Etienne going too high, especially given the Etienne chatter that's been happening on Twitter over the last 36 hours or so?
I'm going to go with no and yes. I think DeAndre Hopkins is not too high right now because what you get with Hopkins, you get one of the premier wide receivers in the game. We'll talk about him a little bit later on the show because I do think we are forgetting about how good he is. And a lot of times when we're talking about bounce back candidates, it's usually because they were injured or we missed part of their time. Something happened to them last season that affected them going forward, and that's why they become bounce back candidates. And DeAndre Hopkins is one of those candidates. He's quarterback proof. He wants to go to a place with a good quarterback, a good defense, and a good management system, like the rest of us. Really, we all want that. That's exactly what we want, not just for ourselves, but for DeAndre Hopkins as well. He gets to pick and choose where he's going for the first time in his career, and he's probably looking for a quarterback that values teamwork, maybe more so than the game of Call of Duty right now. So I think DeAndre Hopkins is going to be flirting with wide receiver 1 status this season. I think I'd have to double check my rankings, but I think I got him somewhere in that wide receiver 18 range right now. And I think his ADP is a little bit further beyond that at this point. That ADP is going to climb throughout this offseason. Now, as far as Travis Etienne is concerned, I think he is overhyped right now. I think that ADP is too high because we know what Travis Etienne is at this point in his career. He is one of the most explosive backs in the league. Let's not forget about that. But for whatever reason, his ceiling is capped with his lack of pass catching ability. He can catch the ball, I think. I mean, we talked about it. He's got every trait that you could possibly want, except he doesn't get the ball. He's not a big running back, so he's going to wear down middle of the season. And that's why the Jacksonville Jaguars went out there and drafted themselves. If you could build a back, it's going to be Tank Bigsby. He's everything you can want. 5'10", 210 pounds. I mean, he is like the picture perfect running back as far as I'm concerned, as far as build is concerned. And he's going to be that kind of running back that's going to be able to withstand the everyday rigors of the National Football League. Now, Etienne is still that back to have on your roster from the Jacksonville Jaguars. But Bigsby is this guy, you're like, you know what? If I'm looking to back up my running back, I think the term a lot of people use is handcuff. I'm not a big fan of that term, but you could do worse than Tank Bigsby in that situation behind Travis Etienne. And I think Travis Etienne's going around RB12 right now. I got him a little bit lower. I got him down at my RB19 because I look at the running backs that I have that ahead of him, and some may surprise you, some may not, but I look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Why? He's got that PPR potential. I look at Rachaad White, same thing. Leonard Fournette ran like the second most routes amongst running backs last season, and he's gone. Joe Mixon. If you would have asked me about Joe Mixon 2 months ago, this would be very different, but this is still an offense in which he sees a lot of pass catching work. Then you look at guys like David Montgomery, who I think can coexist in an offense with Jahmyr Gibbs, Tony Pollard, J.K. Dobbins, I think is poised for a big breakout, Breece Hall, Najee Harris, Derrick Henry. I don't see where I could put Travis Etienne ahead of any of those guys.
Yeah, and that's that you mentioned the pass catching has been a struggle, but also he lacked efficiency near the goal line. He was one of the worst. He was one of the worst running backs in the red zone with regard to yards per carry. He was not converting the touchdowns. And Doug Peterson came out even before the draft and said he wants more backs involved. They re-signed JaMychal Hasty. Tank Bigsby was day 2 draft capital. And frankly, I think he's going too late in dynasty drafts. Like he's going mid-second round in a lot of the rookie dynasty drafts that I'm going in. And I think he's background first, especially if you're a running back needy team or there's premiums on the need for running back in your dynasty leagues. That's someone that you should be considering at that like 1-2 turn. But to hit on DeAndre Hopkins, to bring it to put a bow on it, last year DeAndre Hopkins was wide receiver 9 in rate of being a flex play. Like he was still in wide receiver 1 territory, even as a floor. And 10% of the time, actually, let me pull it up. I looked at the wrong column. 6% of the time, he was a top 5 wide receiver. 4% of the time was top 10. But he was consistently giving you a nice floor, despite the fact that there was turmoil with getting passes from Chris Streveler and David Blau and Trace McSorley near the end of the season. There was rumblings recently that DeAndre Hopkins sat out the last 2 games of the season. even though he was marked as injured, I wouldn't blame him. I wouldn't want to catch passes from David Blau and Trace McSorley, but I still think he has it. As you mentioned, mid-pack wide receiver 2 is undervalued. So to put a bow on it, I agree with you, Matt, on both points there.